So without further ado, I'd like to welcome William Henry to this radio program on this very special experience of talking about his new book, The Illuminator.
Thank you, Whitley. Thanks again very much for having me on the show.
Well, you know, I'm pretty surprised at certain things that you've done in this book. Let me ask you first, and I've asked you this question before, and you never give me a straight answer. And yet now I see from the beginning, when I discovered your work through Nick Begich of Earth Pulse Press, your first early book that he published, I was so struck by the degree of kind of hidden knowledge that you possessed. And that has gone on and on and on until now you come up with something so extraordinary in the Illuminator that I was very amazed when I opened the pages of this, and it felt like information that I had always known, but that had never kind of articulated itself in my mind, like you unlocked a door. And William, I want to know your version, and I know that how do you do this?
Well, it's a constant process for me of amassing historical information, new data, always looking for that missing piece of the puzzle that seems to elude us all the time. And it just seems that as you pick up one piece, there's yet another piece that needs to be picked up. I've so often reminded myself and others that I think that people so often talk about the truth as if there is one whole truth, but in fact what we're dealing with are shards of the truth, pieces of it that get picked up, and every now and then we claim that that small piece is the actual truth, but really it's just part of a larger whole. And it's been my constant quest to gather as many of those pieces as possible.
Well, William, there is structurally across the whole body of your work a kind of progression of insight, and this partly reflects study, I know that, but the critical insight in the Illuminator is so far beyond anything else. And folks, what we're going to be talking about is, I'm not playing games with you. I'm not going to do radio talk show host tricks, which I know very well how to do, to put off the key stuff and put it off until right at the end we finally say, and the skeleton was in, and then you hear the music and it's over. No, I'm not going to do that. Okay. In the Illuminator, you begin to talk about a physical relationship between the body and the soul, and a way of reaching enlightenment through, I believe, if I'm not correct, if I understand the first part of it correctly, the alchemy of scent. But let's first talk about the skeleton. Tell us, William, a little bit about what you have found out about the human skeleton.
Well, the human skeleton is what we think of as the temple. Whenever we're in a piece of myth or scripture and we see the word temple referenced, we can substitute with the word human skeletal structure. The bones are, in a sense, an archive of ancient knowledge, and if we can learn how to tap into the bones, they will reveal the secrets of where we came from, who we are. I mean, after all, our bones are literally composed of matter that was sprung from supernova explosions in distant galaxies, and because of that, we have a connection with the stars built right into ourselves. And so what I've attempted to do is to look at the body as the temple. I reference Solomon's temple, for example, in the book, and one way we can think of Solomon's temple is that it is literally the soul's temple, and that's what the human body is, in my view.
Now, soul, in this sense, also refers to light, to the sun.
That's right. Yes, it does. You have
Tell us a little bit about that relationship.
Well, you have that funny wordplay of soul spelled S-O-L, which means sun, it means light, and then you have S-O-U-L, which refers to our divine essence, the soul. And it's very interesting the way that those terms come together in a word such as Solomon, in the reference to Solomon's temple.
Now, these words, and one of the things about your work that's so fascinating to me is that, and this is more true as time goes on, but you're beginning to use relationships between, for example, the many ancient Egyptian words that have entered the English language in one way or another, and the hidden structures in those words in English. And you speak of an author who has been one of my favorites for many, many years of my life, Harold Bailey.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about, tell us who he was and why the work he did is so important in the larger sense.
Harold Bailey was an early 20th century British author. He was very interested in the language symbolism. In fact, he has a book that's still available today, a 2-volume set called The Lost Language of Symbolism, in which he chronicled the Cathar's use of ancient symbols, and he was among the first to really connect the Cathar symbols with other cultures such as Egypt to reveal the incredible mystic knowledge that the Cathars possessed. But in addition, Harold Bailey also used phonetic resonance between words in English to reveal otherwise hidden meanings, and this is something that caught my attention, and as I started to work with this process of using phonetic resonance in English, it started to open up some incredible doors that most people aren't even aware existed.
Well, tell us a little bit about the doors that it opened up.
Well, for me, Whitley, what it showed is that, wait a minute, there is this interconnection between all of these languages, and that by following this trail of words that sound alike in English, suddenly we're connecting things that seemingly don't belong together, but when you look at it, it makes perfect sense that they belong together.
Now, give us some examples of what you mean here.
Well, one of the classic examples that I like to cite, and to use contemporary vernacular, contemporary vernacular, is the word terror. I mean, we hear politicians come on television all the time talking about, hey, we're winning the war on terror. And sometimes if they're from the South, they'll say that, they'll pronounce it by saying, we're winning the war on terror. And to my ear, it sounds like what they're saying is the word Tara, spelled T-A-R-A, which is in fact a Buddhist term. It's a term for the Buddhist goddess of compassion. And it makes me wonder if, in fact, there is a war on compassion and enlightenment that is unfolding in our world right now. It shows us in this very simple example how the power of our words can have such a dramatic impact.
Well, there is such a war, and it unfolded. The whole war was initiated with a single gunshot, a bullet moving out of a gun in Serbia and into the head of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, which destabilized our world. That instability has continued ever since. Our world has literally lost its ability to direct itself. It is crashing. It's going down in flames. Now, we've had a respite when the defeat of first the Nazis and then communism should have brought in an era of peace, but the world leadership was quick to make certain that did not happen. Why, William, would they do that when we had the chance, after the fall of the Iron Curtain and the collapse of the Soviet Union, to become a much more peaceful world? Why didn't we? Well, based upon the research that I did for the Illuminator in researching the early Gnostic Christian relationship with a group of beings who called themselves archons or rulers, we seem to be dealing with a relationship between the powers that be and an extraterrestrial force that feeds on human fear, that seeks to keep us in a realm of terror. I mean, I was astounded to the way that this word terror was reintroduced in such a massive way into our vocabulary back in 2001. At that time, I had been researching the Maya prophecies that said that we're entering an era between
the year 2000 and 2012, in which we would be experiencing an increase of compassion and enlightenment in our world. In fact, we would be entering an age of terror, of compassion and enlightenment. And suddenly, here comes this word terror that seems to fix us like dogs chained to a pole to this frequency of fear. And the only explanation that I can have for the reason why they would want us to be chained in this way to the word terror is because they know that an unstoppable force is entering into our world. A new light is emerging, and the last thing they want to have happen is to have a civilization full of enlightened people or people that are on the path to enlightenment.
At what points is this entering our world?
At what point is it entering?
At what points is this new light entering? Yes.
Well, it's an individual by individual basis. I travel a lot, and it's amazing to me the sheer number of new people that are suddenly awakening. And this is occurring on a daily basis because of works like, recently the Da Vinci Code, and others that are starting to awaken people that, wait a minute, there is another version to this story. And when they begin to look at the parallel version, especially of the Christian story, and they jump tracks into the esoteric or Gnostic version of the story, this is what is driving their awakening. And this is why I feel that there's such a rise of fundamentalism on the planet right now, why the various governments and religions are trying to lock down various sacred places, why people are trying to dig their roots deep into the past and try and stay there. But everything that we see about us is causing change and asking us to awaken to this change and, in fact, to become a part of it.
The really important work, folks, goes on behind the scenes. In other words, what these world leaders are doing to prevent access to important material in Egypt, thanks to Zahi Hawass and his friends, or to destroy materials or steal them or hide them in some way in Iraq, thanks to our games that we're playing there. That doesn't actually matter. What matters is that you not let that use you to eat your energy. Those items are of no importance, because what is really of importance is something that this gentleman, William Henry, knows a whole lot about. It's in our bodies. Now, William, just before we go on, since we have no ads this time, folks, I want to remind you, the Illuminator is available from the unknowncountry.com bookstore. You can get it. It's there. Do get it. Do read it. And also, I will remind you that this thing keeps going because of your subscriptions. And I know I get letters all the time from people saying, why don't you just take ads? I will not do that. Absolutely not. Because this belongs to you. You have to say, you have to make an inner movement toward this thing. This is a very serious business that's going on here. It's not like radio shows. It's not a commercial enterprise at all. Ann and I pay a lot of money every month, at least $3,000 or $4,000, to keep this website going. And your subscriptions, if we had to pay much more than that, we wouldn't be able to, but we are able. So you help us if you can, and subscribe as well. Now let's get back to the Illuminator. William, who exactly is the Illuminator? And I want to go ahead and answer that, and then we'll go on into more detail about that.
Well, according to Jacobus de Voragine, who is a 13th century Italian chronicler of the myths and legends of the saints, Mary Magdalene is the Illuminator. And he called her that because she was considered in the parallel Gnostic tradition to be the enlightened one. She was the one who brought about awakening, and for this reason he called her the Illuminator.
Let's talk a little bit more about the Cathars and the Gnostic tradition, and then we'll get more into him and his work and why it's just disappeared. But tell us a little bit. Let's go back to Bailey, if we can, and talk a little bit more about these symbols, and who were these people? What were they like, and where were they?
The Cathars lived in southern France, Whitley. They lived in the region that includes this area of mystery called Rennes-le-Château. They
Where you have been.
Yes, where I've been numerous times pursuing these mysteries and attempting to more fully understand this incredible transfer of knowledge that the Cathars have offered to us. They claimed that they were given a symbol system from a group of people called the Desposini. The Desposini is a word that refers to the family of the Lord. Authors such as Lawrence Gardner and even Father Malachi Martin have concluded that this family of the Lord we're referring to are the descendants of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. And the idea is that they possessed a secret teaching that somehow transformed them into more advanced humans. And that this symbol system that they possessed was given to the Cathars. They preserved it for a number of years until they were persecuted by the Catholic Church during the Inquisition. After this time, this symbol system goes underground and is preserved in the watermarks or paper marks of the Cathars, which were ultimately collated by Harold Bailey and put in his book, The Lost Language of Symbolism.
Tell us a little bit about some of these symbols and what they may mean.
Well, there's some incredible ones. They called themselves the good people, which I think is a wordplay or a pun on the God people. They were literally God's people.
It's also what the people of the fairy faith called the little creatures known as fairies, and there's a lot of other references that seem to link the two things in your book, although you don't mention the fairy faith directly.
No, I don't, but you're right. It is always behind the scenes, and the reason I didn't mention it is because I'm still doing research on that. In my recent trip to Rennes-le-Château back in the summer of this year of '05, I was pursuing some of the mysteries of how the Knights Templar and even Mary Magdalene may have been interacting with the fairy folk in recovering alluvial gold, this ancient gold that had been mined there near Rennes-le-Château. So there's no question that that's a big part of this story, which I'll probably be commenting again on in the future in a later work. But behind this is this whole idea that through this symbol system that the Cathars possessed, it represents the actual original Christian teaching that enables one to transform themselves into one of these, what we might think of as a Christ-like being. It is the language of the illumined ones, the language of the Illuminator, Mary Magdalene herself.
Because, you know, in my opinion, Christ left behind a sign of his illumination in the form of the Holy Shroud. And I'm sorry that, you know, people who think it was a medieval forgery, I think they're just wrong. I think that's been proved amply. And who think it can be explained in some other way, well, there are similar things can be made similar to the shroud. But when you see that in fact, the weave of the thing and the more recent carbon dating that's been done, and the materials, pollens and so forth that were found on the shroud, place it at the time of Jesus in the Holy Land, then you come to the conclusion that something extraordinary happened there, that an energy was released from that man as he ascended out of the tomb, and that the signal of it was left on that cloth. Now, that wouldn't have been done if there was no way for us to follow this and do it too. Remember this, the whole power of the church and the great, vast evil that has been done is to say that there must be something between you and Christ. There must be a whole institution, an edifice, a set of moral laws set down by others, and not only that, but that you're born evil. So you have to go to the church for salvation. You only have one place to go. It's always been the same place, the kingdom of God within us. That is to say, the house of Christ, the tomb. our bodies. Tell us a little bit more. Let's talk now about anointing and the process of anointing, William.
Well, yeah, this is the subject that prompted me to write this book, The Illuminator, because very often you come across these references to Mary Magdalene and her anointing oil, and they talk in terms that this was some kind of a nard substance that might even have been spikenard. I happen to disagree with that. I think that nard is a catch-all phrase. I came across some research by an Assyrian researcher, a researcher into ancient Assyria, who was examining the pharmacological texts of the ancient Assyrians. And this is something that traditional scholars had looked at for years, and they dismissed these early Assyrian pharmacists as being very primitive because they used such things as pig droppings and dog poop in their medicines. And so the modern scholar looks at that and says, oh my, what primitive people these must have been. But then there was one scholar who looked at those same texts and said, that doesn't make sense. And so he did some digging, and what he discovered was the actual code books where it was revealed that the pig droppings referred to such and such, and the dog poop referred to another substance. And the reason that they used those terms was so that their competitors wouldn't be able to figure out what they were doing, nor could their patients go ahead and mix up these concoctions themselves. And so I think that when we are talking about Mary Magdalene using nard to anoint Jesus, that is a catch-all phrase that refers to another substance altogether. And by calling it nard, that pretty well dismisses about 99% of the people who are looking at that story. They're going to accept it as literal truth that that's what it was. But in reality, I think we're talking about something completely different. And what my research revealed is that Mary Magdalene and Jesus, first and foremost, were not the simple-minded people that led fairly simple lives that are often portrayed in the cartoon version of their lives. These people were hardcore esoteric researchers. I mean, traditional Christianity very seldom, if ever, portrays Jesus and Mary Magdalene in their natural habitat, in temples such as Dendera in Egypt and Abydos in Egypt, both of which were used, especially Dendera, as perfumeries. And when we talk about a perfumery in the ancient world, it's very interesting to learn that what we are talking about are substances that dealt with our spiritual well-being more than it did with a scent that enhanced our physical attractiveness. And this is the core of my investigation into Mary Magdalene, revealed in The Illuminator, is that she was a hardcore esoteric researcher who was well-schooled in the ancient schools of Isis, of Inanna, of Istara, of Mari, and all the other ancient goddesses, and that she had the capability of creating a substance, a cosmic substance, and when she anointed Jesus, she was actually embalming him. She was preparing him for that experience you described just a moment ago that is presented in the artifact we call the Shroud of Turin.
Exactly. Now, William, let's go in a little bit into, because a lot of us are hearing this for the first time, suddenly a link between the physical world around us and enlightenment through the body, through the medium of the body, as a medium of exchange between the physical world and the spiritual world. We're plugged in to the physical world. The plug is the body. Now, the soul, the essence, the odor. Let's talk about the way scent enters the body and affects the brain through the amygdala, as you discuss it in the book.
Yeah, that is one of the most incredible pieces of information that I think we can talk about in terms of Mary Magdalene. People don't exactly agree on the meaning of the word Magdala, but as we've been talking, it's vital that we try to find ways to take myth and scripture and put it inside the body. And what we find is that there is a center in our brain.
Let's just stop a second, and I hope I'm not annoying you folks, but he just said something terribly important. Say it again. Put what inside the body?
Put myth and scripture inside the body.
Put myth and scripture inside the body. You hear this now. This is a way of moving this material, these thought patterns almost would be one way to describe them, into your body, using your body's receptor system to do it. Go ahead, William.
That's right. I mean, just a comment here is helpful, Whitley, that the body is designed, in my view, as a resurrection machine. That is what the body is. Its purpose is to act as the pillar, as the link, as the stairway to heaven from the soul's perspective. And that's what we're all trying to get a hold of here, is the way that we can kickstart this resurrection machine, the way that our soul can climb the ladder to heaven. And in order to do that, we've got to become more and more familiar with our mystic anatomy, or certainly the mystic function of our anatomy. And the particular part of the brain that we're talking about now is the amygdala, which functions as a fear sensor. It processes fear. When you are in a situation where you feel fear, where your palms get sweaty, where your body temperature changes, this is the amygdala that is responding. And I don't think that it's a coincidence that we have the amygdala as the brain center responsible for overcoming fear, and the name Mary Magdalene, because that is her chief role. In order for Jesus to do what he did, he had to be in a place of pure bliss, in a place of pure love. And it is Mary Magdalene who possessed the means by which to enter that state of pure bliss and pure love. And she did it through the production of scents, through aromas, through spiritual substances that activated these latent powers within us.
Now, people are going to be immediately tempted to think, well, my God, maybe I could make or buy something that would have this odor in it, that it would help me. Now, what are we talking about here? Is that possible?
Well, I think spikenard, because it's referenced, may be one of these substances that will help to trigger this. But overall, what we're talking about is the way that we can begin to achieve this exalted state is simply by choice, by right focus and right concentration on choosing love over fear. That's where it all begins right there. We have to begin to live in what so many call the perfect moment, where we are in the moment and we are constantly focused on the right words, the right thoughts, the right actions. This is, of course, Buddha's Eightfold Path that I'm describing here, and that was the Buddha's prescription for overcoming suffering. Choosing right words, right thoughts, right action, right intention. And what that does is it seems to trigger this essence from within us naturally.
Meaning that if we can get ourselves into the right state, these odors, these scents might be able to really soothe something within us. It's the soothing of this fear that's important, and this is why the Magdalene's whole approach to Jesus, the washing of the feet, it was a process of soothing. Then this is terribly, terribly important to understand. And I spent a lot of years in the Gurdjieff Foundation, and Mr. Gurdjieff had another name for this that's very revealing. He called it the organ kunda buffer. The organ kunda buffer is an organ placed in the human body to prevent Kundalini energy from rising up the spine. In other words, to prevent you from going up Jacob's ladder. That organ, in one respect, can be viewed as the amygdala when it generates fear response. Now, you understand how very, very deep this is within us, and it's why scent is important, because nothing goes deeper into your being and consciousness and below your consciousness than odors and scents. William, can you tell us a little bit more about what the Magdalene exactly did to Jesus in preparation for this extraordinary moment of resurrection that is commemorated for us in the Shroud of Turin?
Sure, but just before I do that, I want to recommend one other scent, Whitley, and that is the scent of rose. And the reason I recommend that is because the French word rose is so close to the Egyptian word rus, which means gate. And the way we open these gates, I believe, also is through this scent, and certainly the scent of rose is something that we can all keep around us very easily. We can keep roses in a vase, and we can enjoy the scent that way, or we can get concentrated rose oil. So that would be something that I would definitely recommend. Now, getting back to your question, what we have to, again, understand or begin to appreciate is the extensive training that Mary Magdalene must have undergone preparatory to her experience of meeting Jesus on that one night in Capernaum. She, as a priestess of Isis, as a priestess of Inanna, and a priestess of the Syrian goddess Mari, most certainly would have been schooled in the methods by which these individuals, which were called the temple prostitutes or harlots, had the capability of opening gates into other realms. And I've said this several times, that when you really look at the story between Jesus and Mary Magdalene, it almost begins to appear that he was her daredevil test pilot, and she was the one that seemed to possess more of the keys of knowledge. And without her, his mission, his revolution, really wasn't going to be going anywhere, because she, in fact, was the one that possessed the secret of this substance that was called Christ, which means anointed, which was called Christos or Krestos, which comes from the Egyptian word karast, spelled K-A-R-A-S-T, which means oil. And by introducing this substance, this essence to Jesus, this is what transformed him into the Christ-like being that we refer to today. And I always encourage people to make the distinction between Jesus the person and Christ as the holy substance, because there is a very distinct difference between the two.
Yes, there is a distinct difference between the two. Jesus was a person, but Christ, the holy substance, can become part of you right now.
That's right.
That's the difference, and it's considerable. The vestigial memory of that is the process of communion that takes place to this day in some Christian, some subgroups of Christianity, most notably, I guess, the Episcopalians and the Catholics and a few others. But that's only a symbolic act. We're talking about a real thing that can happen to you here and now. There's reality behind all of these old stories and symbols that we have had that reality forcefully separated from us by the illusions of these institutions that we don't need. We don't need them. We don't need them. Yeah. What do we need, William?
Well, what we need is, I really feel, is to understand our bodies from this perspective, that esoteric Christianity, which again is drawing from some of these ancient traditions, was dedicated to the revelation of secrets that enable us to put on the new clothes. And that's what I feel like we all need. What we're all attempting to create here is to, from within us, to draw upon these sacred traditions of India, of Iran, of Egypt, of Greece, and the mystical Jewish traditions, and those of the first Christians, and assimilate and formulate the teaching whereby the average individual can ignite our divine self. And we do that by, again, focused intention, but also by understanding the mystical aspects of our body, and that, in fact, this is an amazing gift that we have, this gift of life, and we need to be able to learn how to use this body in its mystic sense, rather than to let it be used as a sword in somebody else's battle, which unfortunately is where most of us are at.
As soon as we embrace the yes and the no, yes, this is good, no, that's bad, and we reject one faith for another. I'm a Lutheran, and the Methodists are all idiots. Or I'm a Christian, and the Buddhists and the Islamic people are all going to hell. Or I am Islamic, and therefore the others are all going to hell. All of that is that is activating the amygdala and making the fear vibration a permanent part of your being, so that you never escape, and then you die. And what happens then, William?
Well, for the most part, I personally believe that we're either going to reincarnate or you're going to stay in limbo for a time, and that's just my personal belief. I don't have anything to actually point to that says that's an absolute fact, but that's what I believe.
And this profound forgetting of self, being, and life that we dignify by the term reincarnation will beset you again, and so it will go until there will come a time when there are no more bodies for us to incarnate into, and there are people who came in here now with a kind of warning saying that the time in which there is going to be a plethora of bodies and plenty of bodies to go around so you can keep doing this is just about over. And then you're left in a state of limbo forever. I mean, maybe for millions of years, for vast, unimaginable amounts of time. You don't need that. Now, as not before in thousands of years, this planet is attuned to ascension. It's really available now, so listen up. William, I want now, with that in mind and bearing that in mind, to begin to talk about another level of energy, the Tower and the Magdalene.
Yeah, this is one of the things that, again, prompted me to write the book. I've kept seeing references to the oil of Mary Magdalene and also references to this mystery of the meaning of the name Magdalene. It's said to mean tower or tower of the flock, and I was very curious, what does that mean? What are we really talking about there? And you have so many great scholars that just seem to repeat the same thing over and over again without really looking more deeply into the meaning of what might be referenced here. And when I began to look into Mary Magdalene's story here, and especially this connection of her name and its meaning of tower, I was really basically shocked to find that it led me right back to the story of the Tower of Babel. What other tower is there of such significance that would cause someone to be called the Tower? And in fact, her name, Mary, means beloved, and so with that, Mary Magdalene actually means the beloved tower. Well, the tower that has been beloved throughout history, the one that has been lost, that we're all seeking to reclaim, is the Tower of Babel, which was, of course, built originally by Nimrod in ancient Iraq. It was called the ladder or stairway to heaven, or the gate to God. And there was a force referred to as Yahweh in the Old Testament that destroyed that tower and separated humankind by language. And ever since that time, for the past 4,000 years or so, we've been seeking the secrets of this tower, the secrets of that gate that will enable us to return to the heavens. And it is Mary Magdalene, I believe, that possessed those secrets of that tower. And that accounts for one reason why she's been so disparaged by the official church authorities.
Well, because of the fact that she represents a kind of freedom. If you embrace this, you soon find out that bypassing the church authorities actually helps you. It's good. It's better. Because you bypass a lot of the fear response, which is ingrained from the very beginning in the idea of that we're born with original sin. We're born in that state, and it's just not true.
Can we talk about that just for a moment, Whitley? Because that's one of the real fundamental steps that I ask people to take in this book, is that when you go back and you look at the original Babylonian version of sin, where many of these principles were originally laid down, say 600 BC, you find that originally humankind, we didn't worship the gods. We worked for the gods. And the work that we did for the gods was we served them pure food. We served them food, we served them wine, and that food had to be pure because the gods themselves were pure. And what that meant was that the humans serving this food themselves had to be pure. What this means is that the gods taught a select group of humans, which included people like Ezekiel, Elijah, and others. These gods taught them to become gods themselves. And by serving the gods, by working for the gods, we were then able to walk the stars with the gods. The way that the gods knew that you weren't doing the proper work for the gods was you got sick. And that was the original definition of sin. The definition of work for the gods was the great work, what today we call the magnum opus or alchemy. So what this is saying is that originally the Babylonian gods taught humankind the secrets of alchemy so that they themselves could become pure and would live lives free of sin. Now the Bible teaches that we're all sinners, and we don't in fact die of complications from diabetes or strokes or heart attacks. We die because we're sinners. But what they forget to tell you is that the way to overcome sin is not by believing in another God. The way to overcome sin is to do the work, to do the alchemical work that will transform you from an ordinary mortal into an immortal being. And that is the fundamental transformation that the church implemented, by which they began to control people. And I talk about this in several chapters of the Illuminator, and I think it's one of the most important pieces of information in the book, is that we didn't worship the gods, we worked for them, and the work we did was the alchemical transmutation that transformed us into star walkers. And by the way, it's Ezekiel, it's Elijah. There's only one other person in the Bible that's mentioned that overcame sin, that affected this transformation within themselves, and that is Mary Magdalene.
And this, by the way, ancient idea that we would be able to walk the stars is reflected, and I do use that word carefully, in the whole ancient Egyptian religion, in the Osiris legend, in the idea of the resurrection of Jesus, and even in the most unexpected places. I went once to a little place down in South Texas, close to the Mexican border, along the Pecos River, where a dear old friend of mine had found, this is actually his ranch, and it's now been made into something called the Rock Art Foundation, had found, while out hiking one day, the most magnificent piece of rock art in the Americas, and it is called the White Shaman, and there is this wonderful shamanic figure pointing to the journey from the river up through the waters and into the stars. And William, of course, we look at the Osirian, which was probably the most ancient structure in Egypt, if not one of the most ancient in the world, and it has to do with some kind of a water-related ritual, and Jesus, of course, is the fisher of men. Can you tell us a little bit more about water and the relationship of water to ascension into this new state?
Right, yeah, there's constant references, Whitley, to the living waters, which are the cosmic waters, which I feel are cosmic rays. Mary Magdalene was called in France the mistress of the waters, and again, very good scholars suggest that she was called mistress of the waters because she sailed over water when she left Palestine and journeyed to France. Now, again, that satisfies about 99% of the people. But that didn't satisfy me, and so when I started looking into this, especially with the connection between Mary Magdalene and Isis, we find that Isis is also called the mistress of the waters, the lady of the waters. And in fact, what it refers to is this cleansing and purification that we've been talking about throughout our conversation today. It's this ability of us to utilize our body as an antenna to attract these beneficial cosmic rays, these living waters that bring about a cleansing and purification of our body, and in fact represent, I believe, the culmination of the great work that the gods had intended for us to perform.
Now, William, this relates, as you know, to a great deal of material in the Illuminator. I refer to the kingdom of light and this journey on the bark of Ra. You say in the book, it's the fact that virtually all the great gods and myths sail in a ship, and then you speak of a celestial vehicle, and you begin to speak of black holes, and the remarkable coincidence is, or if it is indeed a coincidence, of the different the shape of the bark of Ra, and the shape of this model on page 77 of your book of a black hole and a white hole and movement between them. You then refer to the work of NASA's Advanced Propulsion Physics Workshop, members of which I know quite well. So let's now take off, William, in the bark of Ra. Okay?
Yeah, that's what an incredible story, and just glad you're back, Willie.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, well, at the time I was horrified because I thought, my God, I'm lost in the Twilight Zone with a child belonging to someone else. If they never see us again, it was horrifying, frankly.
Absolutely riveting story. Absolutely. But yeah, as this relates to the kingdom of light and the ship of the gods, it appears that they had this ability to toggle between the worlds, and this seems to be the experience that you had. But in addition to this toggling between the worlds, these stargates or wormholes that appear to be described in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which is the source of the illustration that I use in the Illuminator. What we see is Ra on this ship. It has a mouth of this ship. It has the body, and then it has a second mouth that almost precisely matches the shape that modern science uses to portray a time travel machine, a stargate, or a wormhole. And in fact,
you seem to not differentiate between a stargate, which would presumably move us instantaneously from one star system to another, or one planet to another, and a time machine. Can you define exactly your terms here?
Well, yeah, I mean, when you talk with different advanced physicists, people working in this hyperdimensional physics area, they often will interchange the term stargate and wormhole. I mean, we do seem to think of more from the model proposed by, for example, Carl Sagan in the movie Contact, where he presents this device that literally enables instantaneous travel, in the example of the movie Contact, to the center of the galaxy. And it is a form of time travel because of the vast distances that you're able to travel, that you could go theoretically to the center of the galaxy and back almost as if no time had passed at all. And that would enable one to effectively time travel, basically, is what we're talking about.
Now, 2 weeks ago, we were talking, we ended our conversation with beginning a discussion about the ancient gods and the servants of the gods and what they were doing and what purity meant, because as we concluded, we talked about how it was necessary to be pure in order to serve the gods their food. They required this. What, William, exactly is this purity? Because this purity is the key to everything.
It really is. In the statement that I included in the book, in the section on the Kingdom of Light, that statement from the Pistis Sophia, when Mary Magdalene asks Jesus a question, and in response to that question, he says, and I'm quoting him now, he says, "Do not cease seeking day or night, and do not let yourselves relax until you have found all the mysteries of the Kingdom of Light, which will purify you and make you into pure light and lead you into the Kingdom of Light." Now, I mean, this is an amazing, amazing statement that should be the centerpiece of certainly mainstream Christianity, although it's not. It is the centerpiece, in my view, of esoteric Christianity, and it suggests to me that this is a mission statement for Earth on life, or life on Earth, rather, coming directly from Jesus himself. And this is a statement that is presented to Mary Magdalene from Jesus in his resurrected form. So what we're asked to believe here is that he has effected this transformation into a being of pure light, and he is now dwelling in the kingdom of light. And what that means to me is that he has effected that transmutation from the present cocoon state of the human body into this space-time light vehicle that's often referred to as the Merkaba or the Merkaba, a vehicle of light that enables us to literally travel the stars.
Which is liable to become very important to us folks. And I think that what happened to me and that little boy together whatever powers that be knowing, I never would have believed it if it had happened to me alone. I would have attributed it to something else. They were made sure that couldn't occur because I had a witness. I mean, I went between into a parallel universe in an old Jeep Cherokee with a kid in it. You can't get more down to earth and sort of out there at the same time than that. And, well, yeah, there was one thing. It was, we were next to the Paramus Mall in Jersey and on Route 17, another very prosaic place. It certainly did not look like any kind of a wormhole I've ever seen.
Right.
Yeah. However, interestingly enough, one person, when I wrote this in one of my books, I believe in Breakthrough, a fellow wrote saying he'd worked on construction of the Paramus Mall, and they had seen these balls of light coming up out of the ground there during the construction of it. Now, here is the issue, William. Things are hotting up here on Earth. We are well past the hurricane season, and yet tropical storms are still forming in the Caribbean. There is chaos breaking out in terms of weather all over the world. We've already had a series of horrendous earthquakes on this planet in the past 24 months. As we speak, there are people suffering and dying in Kashmir because of a great earthquake and now the cold that has followed. We're in a period of change, a period in which it's quite possible, although not totally certain, that the planet is going to become unable to support large numbers of human beings. William, what I'm talking about is, I think that you may have the key to rescue of at least some of us. Maybe the kind of rescue that has been effected in the past during these earthly upheavals and cataclysms, a kind of rescue that nature intends us to discover. How do you react to this?
Oh, my intuition, my gut says you're absolutely dead on. And we can point to the example of the civilization of Atlantis that appears to have reached this high degree of civilization. And if the work of, for example, Dr. Paul Laviolette is correct, and I believe it is, we have experienced these cyclical cataclysms that have been triggered by super waves coming from the center of the Milky Way galaxy. And in fact, as we speak, I'm here in Phoenix at Dr. Chet Snow's Signs of Destiny conference, and I gave a presentation yesterday called The Anointing of the Dove, and this will be available on DVD, and we'll make a special offer to the Dreamland listeners if they like. What I was chronicling is these amazing discoveries that have been made just within the past couple of weeks about new understandings about the glittering heart of our Milky Way galaxy, new images coming of the center of our Milky Way galaxy, and I talked in particular about Project Stardust, which is a spacecraft that was sent into to retrieve stardust, some of the ancient primordial dust that may even be this monoatomic white powder that Lawrence Gardner and others have spoken about recently. Well, this Project Stardust, the spacecraft returns to Earth on January 16th with a pristine sample of this white, pure stardust. And I describe this as the anointing of the dove, and in this case, the dove that I speak of is the Milky Way galaxy itself. And it's if at this moment we're having this amazing period of discovery where we're learning all these ancient secrets about where we came from, what we're made of, and in my view, we're making these discoveries so that it will enable us to help us through this period of transition. And I think that what happens is that throughout time, these opportunities come available, and we are in the midst of one of these perfect moments where we have this knowledge available to us, and it's up to us to begin to use it and take advantage of this situation.
Exactly, a perfect moment. Whether there is a great cataclysm coming or not, nobody knows. But what we do know is the energetic situation in which we find ourselves is such that we can begin to expand into other worlds and other levels of reality on a personal basis. I have done it physically. Take it to a car with me. It can, therefore, be done. Because, believe me, if I can do it, anybody can do it. Believe you me, that is more true than you could possibly imagine. I am as ordinary as an old Ford in almost every respect. In fact, it wasn't an old Ford, as I said earlier, it was an old Jeep, but the same thing, it still applies. If I can do it, you can do it, folks, and William can do it. Now, what William is trying to do is to break a code, because it is through the energy of understanding that we can learn to go down this crucial path. The energy is there waiting for us. Maybe 1,000 years ago it was impossible to do this. Maybe 15,000 years ago it was ordinary to do this. And it's going to become ordinary again for those who understand. So now, William, let's get back to the Magdalene and what she represents and what she was doing, and how an understanding of the relationship between Jesus and the Magdalene, and let's go all the way back to the beginning, to Mary, to the very beginning, as you do in your book, and let's talk about that relationship and what it means inside our own bodies.
Great. Well, you wanted to talk about the relationship between Mary Magdalene and Mary?
No. Okay, let's do it in two phases. Let's talk first about the relationship between Mary Magdalene and Mary, yes. Then we'll talk about the relationship between the masculine and feminine elements of a light being.
Yeah, I think what often is not understood about Mary Magdalene is that she herself was a temple priestess, an initiate. She continued a transmission of knowledge that had begun in the ancient world, going back to Isis in Egypt, to Mari or Ishtar or Istara as she was called in Babylon, to Inanna, who was the Semitic goddess. She was also called Astarte. And what we have in each of these goddesses, and we notice the repetition of this name or title, Mary or Mari, which means beloved, is a figure, a female figure who possessed literally the knowledge about the Twilight Zone that you're describing, Whitley. They are part of a category of goddesses that possessed this knowledge and appeared from time to time, perhaps even at regular intervals, such as the beginning of new ages, in order to deliver this knowledge. And I feel it's incredibly important, and again, often overlooked, that when Mary Magdalene first meets Jesus in Capernaum, that this, first of all, is no coincidence that they happen to meet. And furthermore, she is not the simple prostitute as she has been portrayed for these past 6 centuries or so. Since the 6th century, so we're talking 13 centuries, there's been this erroneous idea that she somehow was an errant woman, a sinner, and all of these other appellations that are applied to her. Not true. She is absolutely one of the most profound initiates that ever appears in the scene in any religious context. And when she meets up with Jesus, this is a profound meeting of the minds that takes place.
Now, exactly what kind of a meeting of the minds?
Well, in my view, when you go back and you research these stories of these Mary goddesses, of Mari, of Ishtar, they possess the secrets of a ladder, tower, or stairway to heaven. It was always the divine feminine that possessed the secrets of this ladder or stairway, which in the Christian context is called the cross. And in esoteric Christianity, the cross has nothing to do with a wooden beam made of 2 pieces of wood that are stuck together and having an individual crucified upon these beams. Instead, the cross is literally a mechanism by which one crosses the galaxy, crosses the stars. And in my view, based upon this research, this is what Mary Magdalene's role was in the life of Jesus. She was there to prepare him energetically, spiritually, and even physically for this event when he ascended the stairway to heaven and rode the ship of the gods, which today we call a stargate or a wormhole, and literally crossed probably to the center of our Milky Way galaxy.
The human body is a mechanism of transport. It is capable in and of itself of generating this wormhole. Your body is a mechanism that can take you back and forth in time and enable you to physically cross the universe. It is the most powerful piece of technology that has ever existed in this universe. And when you are with others, if you ever are graced with this, who do not have this body but have other kinds of bodies, you will know immediately what I know, which is what you really are. This is why William's work is so important, because he sees intellectually and he is intuiting this material, and the energy of that seeing is in and of itself part of what turns on the machine. Now I want to return again to purity, William, and we're going to keep chewing on these different subjects. Tell me again, in your view, and we talked about this in the last time we were together, and this is so crucial, folks, because the energy of your body depends on this. How do we come to the kind of purity we need?
Well, that's an incredible question, Whitley, and the answer is, in part, as I stated in our last conversation, it begins with simply the intention to make that so, and the choice that is the life path that you are going to pursue. It requires, again, in the statement of Jesus, that we make this the foundation of our life, of seeking these mysteries of the kingdom of life that will purify us and make us into that pure light. And it seems that from that statement that the seeking is a big part of the actual creation of this purity or this being of light. Then in addition, the Pistis Sophia talks about certain keys that are required. These seem to be operating on two levels. First, they're talking about keys of knowledge that we are to acquire, and the good news here is that this knowledge seems to already be embedded within our DNA. Then the second thing that we're looking for are the keys, the vibrations coming from the dove, the Milky Way, the goddess herself, that will this latent knowledge within us. So
what we call, incidentally, folks, just a second, is junk DNA. That's right. Where it is. We talked last week, I believe, week before last, about the code, or the language. Or have we talked about this yet, William?
Maybe not.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the language that was found in DNA. Now, I am supposed to only talk from your knowledge, but I might be slipping something in here. I'm not sure.
Oh, great. Yeah, please go ahead.
Well, I'm going to do it then. Okay, I don't know whether this is in William's book or not. Now, I'll slip it in because it has come out. Junk DNA, if you analyze the structure of what we call junk DNA, it's a linguistic structure. If you analyze it linguistically, it's clear that it is some kind of a language or code that is buried in junk DNA. Now, that information is what you and I and William and all of us are moving toward accessing. We will crack the code. And when you do totally crack the code, you literally change your body's nature. This is what the anointing that Mary Magdalene carried out is all about. The anointing of Jesus is awakening what in our time, this amazing time where everything important is so carefully hidden away, we have decided to call junk DNA. What we really should call it is the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah, that's really incredible. And in fact, in the Illuminator, I talk about this connection between Mary Magdalene and this language system called the language of the angels.
Yes.
And this goes back to the mystic literary tradition that's associated with the place name Magdala, which is where Mary Magdalene is said to have come from. And in this mystic literary tradition, the story is told about Job's daughters who put on 3 cords that Job had acquired from the Lord, as he says, in heaven. These were some kind of shimmering sashes or cords that he gave to his daughters that assured that they would enjoy a life and afterlife in the heavens. And we're not sure exactly what these chords are. I like to make the joke that in Nashville, where I live, if you've got 3 chords in the truth, you've got a hit song.
Yeah. And, well, a chord of let's see. 2 are better than 1, and the chord of 3 strands is not quickly snapped. That's our family motto.
Ecclesiastes, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And so when Job's daughters acquire these 3 chords or sashes, these shimmering chords of light, when his first daughter puts it on, she goes out of her body. Her heart is suddenly transformed. She no longer cares about earthly or worldly things. And suddenly she starts speaking in the language of the angels. Now, this language of the angels is also called the language of the birds. It's believed to be the original pre-flood language that was spoken in the Garden of Eden and was used up until the Tower of Babel incident. And when we follow this trail of this mysticism, this mystic story of Magdala, where Job's daughters lived, and we associate it with Mary Magdalene, it strongly suggests that Mary Magdalene also understood this language of the angels, which I think you're right on top of it, Whitley, is actually the language of this junk DNA.
Yes, and folks, you don't need to learn this. You don't need to go to Berlitz to learn it. The key here is it's to find it, to recover it, and to recover your place in it, because it is written in the DNA of your body exactly who you are and what your place is. And William's journey is so important, and I keep bringing him back on this program, and we have worked together now for years, because it is the journey into the language of the birds, the lost language, the language where you can utter real words of power, without also known as the Enochian calls, and by all sorts of different names. But it is not a matter of doing things in the external, physical world. In other words, you're not going to be speaking to other initiates in this language. Your initiation is in yourself. The language that you seek to discover is the language of the self in dialogue with God. That is the language, and that is the inner journey that you need to take. William, why is this important, this journey through mythology that you're taking, so vitally important to this inner discovery? Can you make the bridge between those two?
Well, it's because the bridge is made through symbols, because symbols are timeless. And it seems that these symbols are what actually activate this knowledge within us, simply by being in contact with the symbol. This is why people wear crosses or stars of David or other religious symbols. It's because they want to connect at the soul level with the energy that is associated with that symbol.
Yes.
And that's why it's so dangerous in our times that so few of us really understand the language of symbols. Although advertising and marketers use these symbols on us all the time, so few of us are able to actually read this language. We're literally blind to the meaning of it. And in fact, political regimes and governments and indeed marketers count on the total blindness of the average individual to the meaning of symbols, and therefore they can use them in advertising. But yes, once we begin to connect with these symbols, we are actually linking with our higher self, because it attracts our soul. It gets our soul excited, and it sets up essentially a tractor beam between our earthly self and our higher self. It begins to put us on this path of literally ascension, of climbing the stairway to heaven. So just by studying the symbols, by meditating on the symbols, and allowing them to pour over our consciousness, we're, in a sense, in this way, beginning this process of understanding at a very deep and subliminal level.
In symbolism, form is content. Never forget that. When William has in his books these little pictures that he has, they're not very, just little black and white pictures and so forth that you see in the books, you find, and it's good that they are simple like this, the more colorful and brighter and more elaborate they are, the less able you are to inculcate them. This is the value of Harold Bailey's work, because it's all in line drawings, and all of the pictures are just very, very simple. Right. Or the essential images that are on the Tarot of Marseille, and not elaborated by all too much pouring from the empty into the void type of intellectual content. But these symbols themselves actually contain power. The images contain power. The places contain power. It does not hurt to go to the places. And William, let me ask you this as a kind of aside here. If someone felt like maybe if they went to a place, where would be a very good place for them to go to find the energy maybe a little higher than at home?
Well, I'm inviting people to come visit me in Nashville.
I'm so glad you said that, because what I'm trying to say here, folks, is you will find in every continent such places. Nashville, why Nashville? Tell us.
Well, for some reason, the energy of Nashville, the spiritual consciousness of Nashville, it's Music City, USA, for one thing. And it's also the only place on the planet that has copies of 2 healing temples from the ancient world. We have a scale replica of the Temple of Holy Wisdom, otherwise known as Athena's Parthenon, in Nashville. We also have a rendering, a 2,200-foot-long magician's rod laid out on 19.5 acres that perfectly models the chakra system of our body. And at this particular place, there's something very fascinating going on since I've been making this comparison of what is called the Tennessee Bicentennial Capitol Mall, this magician's rod with this ancient healing temple called Meru. We actually are transforming it into a healing place. At the apex of this complex, we have what is called the Court of 3 Stars. This Court of 3 Stars is about 60 feet in diameter. It's a circle that is a floor that's made of red, white, and blue granite. This red, white, and blue granite is called a firestone because it's loaded with pure quartz crystal. Now, quartz crystal is programmable, and what we're starting to do there is program this quartz crystal with healing tones from crystal bowls. We're bringing shamans in from all over the world to chant at this place and creating a healing environment at this location. And it's beginning to have incredible effects on people. And so that's why I recommend Nashville. But as you say, just about any place where you're at is the gate to God and the gate to heaven. That was the message of Jacob's ladder's experience. When Jacob ascended the ladder to heaven, he went up the ladder, came back down, looked around, and said, this is none other than the gate to God, and this is the gate to heaven. And where he was talking about is wherever place you are at is the gate, the access point to the heavenly realms, because as you stated, Whitley, it is the body that is the stairway to heaven itself.
Yes. Your body is the cross. The stairway is this journey through symbolism. This is the journey. This is how you will gain this crucial energy. And incidentally, if you do want to visit William in Nashville, well, not a bad idea. You can go to williamhenry.net and find out all the details. Is that correct, William?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Great. So this is all accessible, but actually accessible to only a tiny number of people, because you are if you're listening to this, you're listening to it because you are self-selected. You're a soul that's actually ready to hear this. That's why I have narrowed the focus of accessibility of this so much, quite intentionally, because it's not for people who aren't ready for it. There's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with them at all. In fact, they will be ready for it at some time in the future, but not right now. You're here because you're ready and hungry now. Now, if you don't have to go anywhere to do this, and it's very important, but what you do have to do is 2 things. You need to look into and stand under symbols in whatever way is comfortable for you. Embrace the cross. Understand that it is your body. It is your body. And the journey of the cross is the journey of the body, is the journey through the realm of the flesh. I mean by that the stations of the cross. And you can find a great deal out about this journey through the flesh by simply going to the old stations of the cross, so to speak. It's not that I'm not hostile at all to the humble and ordinary in Christian theology and lore, as long as it helps. Now, William, let's go on in the Illuminator a little farther and a little bit deeper, because we need to start talking about the energy centers and the spine and how these relate. Let's talk about the solar drop.
Yeah, what a phenomenal concept. This is, I began this line of research after our interview with the alchemist David Goddard back in the summer. He's the author of Tower of Alchemy. And David was the one who first introduced me to this idea of the solar drop, or the seed drop within us, this nucleus that is a tiny drop of the divine and is, in fact, our true selves. And what we find when we go back into the ancient mystery schools is that they viewed this seed atom, or this golden drop, as the vehicle of incarnation. In fact, they talk about this golden drop as being that which ultimately grows this body that the soul drop then inhabits. But the present form of our body is not the final state. It is an intermediate state in between the flesh and in between the realm of light. And what the soul drop or seed atom seeks to do is to grow this body of light so that it can return ultimately to the source.
And if you want to understand this in terms of symbols, there's a wonderful symbol of this state of betweenness that we're in. In the tarot cards, the card that is known as the Hanged Man, when you turn it upside down, it becomes a dancer. This is really where you want to be, is between the hanged is dancing between the Hanged Man, as it were, and the cosmic dancer. Bearing in mind, by the way, a lesson that was taught to me by a Kabbalist, Stettler from Poland, who was a very, very advanced in this whole process before World War II. And she gave me a warning, and she said that we had done extraordinary things. They had really succeeded in opening the wormhole, but they had ignored the dark side. And suddenly it came racing across the border at them in the form of German tanks, with these men devoted to the death wish, wearing black uniforms and skull and crossbones on their hats and so forth. It will come back to bite us. It is always dangerous, and it must be not served, but given service. And William, how do you give the dark side respect?
By avoiding it. I mean, really, that's not. You understand that it's there, but to me, it's by focused intensity on the light side. One of the symbols that I use in the book is the ancient symbol of the dot within a circle, and I think that is such an important symbol, because the idea is that circle can be described as a ring. And a ring is a vibration, like when the phone rings, it vibrates. And the idea is that if we can focus our concentration on what it is that we do want, symbolized by the dot in the center of the circle, it's going to tune our vibration so that it creates, in effect, a shield of protection around us. As we've talked so many times, the only two basic vibrations or choices that we have are love and fear. And so to respect the dark side, what I do is focus on the light and try as best I can to keep my energy and my emotion focused on what it is that I do want, and try to minimize as much as possible focus on what it is that I don't want. And what I don't want is encounters with the dark side. And people ask me all the time, doing the research that I'm doing and this sort of thing, do I ever feel afraid of certain authorities or other people that might be, quote-unquote, coming after me? And I just don't entertain that thought. I keep my energy and emotion locked on to what I do want, which is to continue to be a bridge builder between the world that we're in now and this new world that we are all trying to create and manifest together.
Okay, I'm going to expand on this a little bit, and it's going to take a moment. So just hear me out, folks, and William. We have above our bed, Annie and I, a picture. It is a painting done by Ted Seth Jacobs, who did the communion face for me, and a very magical being in and of himself. And it is of a naked woman sitting in the lotus position. She looks very sensual. She's a beautiful young woman, and holding between her legs, holding a golden orb, which she is drawing out of herself. It represents the mother goddess drawing reality out of her vagina and it giving birth to the universe. And this is where the dark side begins, inside the darkness of the body. It is where the womb is and where we grow and come into being, inside the darkness of the womb, as the children of pleasure. In other words, no one would even exist if it hadn't been for sexual pleasure taken in the sweated night. This is what the dark side is really all about. And when you hear people talking about denial of pleasure, of celibacy, of all of these things, what you are really hearing is saying, let's open a gateway and turn the dark side into evil. Evil comes out of the transformation of the pleasure urge into the death wish, because pleasure also hurts. It burns on one level. It burns an unprepared soul. And what is an unprepared soul? Is a soul without compassion. So when you hear the people of hate screaming their political balderdash on the radio or wherever you might hear it, or the sense of injustice that fills the world, go to your own dark side and allow yourself to believe in and become a missionary for the pleasure of the body as well as its pain. Okay, now let's continue on. And we're going to now talk a little bit about the 7 chakras. And folks, everyone, all of you, I'm sure, are very familiar with this. But William has in the Illuminator a particularly interesting take on it. And William, if you would expand on that a little bit more, I would appreciate it very much.
Great. Yeah, it's one of the things that we all have to understand, once again, to repeat, is that these chakras or energy centers represent the stairway to heaven that we're all looking for. And it's through the activation of these energy centers that we ultimately make the connection with the higher energy that's going to affect this transformation. And it is the vital link. It is it is the way. It is the path. These are the doors to enlightenment. And Jesus, Mary Magdalene, they were examples or targets of those who actually achieved this goal, which is the goal of all human psychophysical and psychospiritual evolution, the transformation into a being of light.
Now, there are travelers here, they're all over the universe, that don't use spaceships and travel freely, as indeed Dan, the little boy, and I did, traveled freely without the use of a spaceship, unless you could consider my car a spaceship, which I very much doubt. And I'll tell you, give you an example of how these travelers work. A dear friend of mine was drawn to come to a certain house in Denver some years ago, where she met one of these travelers from another world, and he had a necklace with crystals hanging, quartz crystals hanging from the necklace. And as soon as she came in, he came down off of his perch, and he embraced her and held her head against the crystals. And as she described it, my mind emptied out. Now, William talked a little bit more about programming of crystals. I have 2 crystals here that are programmed. One is programmed to help me gain inner knowledge, and the other is a bigger crystal that's programmed to help me travel. Now, the one programmed to help me gain inner knowledge was programmed by somebody else and given to me. The way it was given to me is this. I dreamed about it very vividly one night, and a beautiful little rose quartz crystal. And the next day, just strolling down the street, I happened to see it in a shop window. And so I bought it. And how I used this crystal, it was, I would get myself into a meditative state, and I would open my third eye by gaining sensation in the center of my forehead. Then I would hold the crystal toward the center of my forehead until I could feel the energy there. And it is not necessary to touch the crystal to your head. The energy will come to you from some distance away, 5 or 6 inches, maybe 3 inches. And hold it there, and then over time, information would come into my mind from having done this. So this is the value of programming crystals. How do you program a crystal? Meditate with the crystal. Sit with the crystal in the same position that the golden orb is in the little painting I just described a little while ago, and let your energy enter the crystal. It will find its own way. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to understand in order to do this. This is one of the beauty of crystals. Okay, that said, William, we're sort of coming close. We have about 10 minutes left, and I've been talking a lot during this exchange. And for those folks of you who don't like to hear me talk, I'm sorry, but this is important, and I have to this time. But William, now I want you to direct the conversation, and I want you to take it where you think it's most important for us to go that we have not gone in the light of the Illuminator, this extraordinary new book.
Oh, boy. Well, right off the bat, we have to, what I would say is that, to repeat, we're coming into this era where suddenly things are going to shift and very, very quickly here, beginning, I feel, in January '06, that we're going to be seeing more and more of this sort of anointing of the dove as I describe it. And what this is going to mean for each of us is that we're more and more going to be seeing and viewing ourselves as vases or containers of the flower of light. And in fact, we will begin to view our bodies more and more as flowers or flowers of light. And that is one of the key transformations. And in fact, one of the glyphs that I use in the book comes from Harold Bailey's collection of Cathar glyphs. And what it portrays is literally a vase that is topped by a fleur-de-lis or a flower of light, and this vase is labeled MR. And what MR, I believe, stands for is amour, which is the French word for love. And when I trace the ancient definitions of this syllable MR, we find that it is an ancient Egyptian term that has significance of the divine head of God. It also means to see. It certainly means love. But in addition, it is a very key mystery term in the Sumerian terminology, where MR, or amour, stood for brightness and shining. And this is, I feel, one of the key images in the book, because this is what the Cathars affected. This is what made them such a threat to the Catholic Church, was that they were able to see, view, and activate their bodies as these flowers or flowers of light. And if we can do this, if we have enough people actually affecting this transformation and becoming these flowers or flowers of light, this changes the garden in which we dwell. It changes everything. It begins to create what was called the kingdom of heaven or kingdom of God on earth. And this is why these secrets have been so closely guarded. This is what has been kept from us for so long, but which is rapidly reappearing in our world.
One of the reasons the secrets have been kept is this. In the kingdom of God, everyone is equal, and in a very startling way. Everyone is equal in the sense that they have infinite power. In the kingdom of darkness where we dwell, there is a hierarchy, and the people at the top of the hierarchy, beyond the political leaders that you can see, there is another group who desperately want to keep their power because they have the ability to touch the edges of the infinite, and they fear to lose that if they lose their place at the top of this dark order that now exists in our world. However, those of us elsewhere who are free of the poison that afflicts them and inflicts them on us can now begin to move a little bit because of the fact that the energies, as William says, are changing, and they are getting less powerful. We are getting more powerful as the earth becomes uncomfortable with the weight of bodies that are living upon it. This birthing process is hard. It will be very hard over the next 3 or 4 generations, or the next even as many as 7 generations. I don't know how many more are actually left for this process. But in any case, it will be hard. But those of us who are able to taste, let's do this in the context of the Illuminator's imagery, to get the scent of the ointment of the kingdom of light will be able to gain the kingdom. Now let's talk a bit about the alabastron, William. This is this remarkable crucible, and its significance, the box with anointing oil.
Yeah, that's right. And this, I was triggered to follow this path of research by Lawrence Gardner, who we had interviewed about his book, The Magdalene Legacy, and it was he who had dug up the fact that originally that Mary Magdalene wasn't presented holding an alabaster jar. It was actually a box, and this box was called the alabastrum. And the reason why the church authorities changed it into a jar was because the box sounded too much like Pandora's box. In the original telling of the story of Pandora's box, this was a box that, once opened, presented all blessings to humanity.
It was Pandora's box for the church, but for you, since the box is as new as this second, in that it is outside of time, it is indeed the box containing the pearl of great price. Go ahead.
That's right. And ultimately what this box, or what this alabastrum is our body. It is the container of this oil. And it's learning how to perceive our bodies as the container of this sacred oil that probably is secreted by the pineal gland and winds its way through the head, literally, because this box was also called the head of God. It is through this that we affect this transformation. The oil that we're looking for is within us. It is the purpose of our life's existence, is to learn how to make or manufacture this oil from within.
Exactly, from within. It is within your own pineal gland. This is what your pineal gland is about. It is about creating this psychic oil that oils the whole machinery of seeing and being, and enables you to become a traveler in the land of God. William, tell us a little bit about how you would go about making this oil within you.
Well, I think that
I know I'm giving you a workout. Don't worry about it. We'll get where we
really
need to go.
Appreciate it. You know, I've always viewed myself as one who points people to the door rather than helps them go through it. So that said, I'm more of a researcher than a practitioner. But what I'm seeing more and more clearly is that it's simply within the breathing that is one of the key entry points to making this oil be secreted from within the pineal gland. One of the most interesting connections that I've ever come across is that between the alveoli in our lungs, which are these tiny packets in our lungs. They look like a cluster of grapes. And the interesting connection here is that not only do the alveoli in our lungs resemble a cluster of grapes, but so does the center of our galaxy, the Holy of Holies of the ancients, what is the heart of the goddess. And I don't think that that's by accident. I think that through the breath is where we really begin to create this link between ourselves and our source at the center of the Milky Way galaxy, which is the source of the vibrations and frequencies that trigger the release of these secretions within the pineal gland. Now, the problem is for most of us is that we spend our lives breathing from the top of our chest. What breath practitioners tell us is that if we're breathing from the top of our chest, we're breathing in a state of fear. And one of the first things that we can do is to become aware of our breathing and to consciously begin to start breathing from deep within our lungs. And in doing so, we are bringing not only the Holy Spirit in, or inviting the Holy Spirit into our bodies, but we are literally prolonging our lives. And if we're breathing more properly, that is going to increase our intelligence, it's going to increase our longevity, it's also going to give us expanded spiritual capacity as well. So while it sounds simple, again, you know, the body system is designed not to be a complicated thing. It is designed to be simple. So one of the things that I'm certainly doing is focusing on my breathing and studying more and more various breathing techniques offered by some of the masters.
Well, William, it's the perfect answer because, of course, it is the key, and it also links odor with this whole process of awakening. And I give you this exercise, folks, and it's a simple exercise. Get yourself some spikenard and some Rose of Sharon, these two scents, and use them in your meditative process to bring the breath deep down inside yourself. You know, when you've I'm sure heard many stories of ghosts, and people will say, well, if we didn't realize a ghost was there, but then suddenly the house filled up with a perfume. This is the scent of a soul. We have a scent on a higher level, and the scent of Rose of Sharon mimics that scent, and the spikenard, it goes deep, deep into you and activates memories that are a bridge between yourself, your physical body, and the kingdom of light, as it were. So if you meditate with these scents near you, don't overdo it. Tochein, nothing over much. Just simply have them near you. Don't put on a face mask and cover it with Rose of Sharon or whatever you may. This is a slow, gentle process that emerges out of compassion for yourself and others and love for all who are on this remarkable journey through the body into the lap and love of God. William, thank you so much for being with us on Dreamland.